Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Master Series, your guide to intelligent production, brought to you by Entertainment Partners. I'm your host, Natalie Nelson. In the Master Series, we focus on important issues impacting the entertainment industry and its workers through in-depth discussions with legal, tax, payroll, technology, and production experts. And today, our experts will be taking you on a whistle-stop tour of the UK's in-demand filming spaces, also touching on the highly anticipated facilities opening their doors soon, the incentives and benefits available to productions filming in the UK. For over 46 years, Entertainment Partners has been at the forefront of the industry, continually investing to ensure our clients and their productions are successful. As a global leader in entertainment payroll, production finance, and production management solutions, our integrated cloud-based solutions support every phase of production. Our established and growing team in the UK specialize in product, engineering, service and support, tax and accounting services, and our incentives and accounting experts, some of whom you will hear from today, offer decades of experience and the best guidance in the industry. A few quick housekeeping items as we get started today. First is that we encourage you to join the conversation by posting questions in the Q&A section of the Zoom call. You can do so by clicking the Q&A icon in the navigation menu, and we'll do our best to save time after today's discussion to answer questions. Also, please take a few seconds after our discussion to answer a short feedback survey. This includes an opportunity for you to give us feedback, as well as to suggest future topics for webinars. Your feedback is very important to us, so a few seconds is all that we ask. Now I'm very pleased to welcome our panelists. Today we are joined by Jamie McCoy, Digital Director and co-founder of Pioneer Studios. Jamie sits on the Scottish Committee as part of the Production Guild of Great Britain's Regions and Nations program, also working closely with the Board of Screen Facilities Scotland to drive the awareness internationally of Scotland as a leading production location. Prior to the film industry, Jamie's background lies in marketing, software, and business growth, running international campaigns for leading technology companies. Pioneer Film Studios is Glasgow's high-end television and film studio campus, opened in April of 2022 to meet industry demand and service the increasing number of international productions choosing to shoot in Glasgow. Recent titles include Indiana Jones, Tetris, The Batman, Jurassic World, The Flash, Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw, and others, all using Scotland for location-based shooting prior to Pioneer's opening. Pioneer are working across the industry to showcase and bolster the leading support for productions in Scotland and the rest of the UK. Also with us, returning, is executive producer Roopesh Parekh. Roopesh is a producer and executive producer working predominantly in high-end television and streaming space. Most recently, Roopesh has produced critically acclaimed series for Lucasfilm, Bad Wolf Productions, and Heyday Films, and has worked closely with NBC Universal, HBO, and Disney. His recent credits include Willow, His Dark Materials, Poldark, and The Long Song. We are also very pleased to welcome Andrew Reid, Chief Content Officer at Northern Ireland Screen. Andrew joined the industry in 1990 as a production runner. After a few years, he was sent to London by the BBC to train as a television drama locations manager. He then joined Northern Ireland Screen in 1997. As head of production, Andrew is responsible for the investment of Northern Ireland Screen's $13 million annual development, production, and skills fund. He oversees the delivery of physical production, project development, new and emerging talent, and skills development schemes. Andrew has a BA in Drama, Film and Television from St. John's, York, an MBA from Queen's University Belfast, and is an alumni of Cass Business School Inside Pictures, a member of BAFTA, and a founding member of the Irish Film and Television Academy. We are also pleased to welcome Adrian Wootton, OBE, Chief Executive of the British Film Commission and Film London. In his role, Adrian leads the unit responsible for promoting the UK as the best place to produce feature films and high-end television. In 2020, Adrian led the BFC's work in developing the COVID-19 production guidance for film and high-end TV drama as part of the BFI's wider COVID-19 screen sector recovery task force. Adrian is a visiting professor at Norwich University for the Arts and an alumni at the University of East Anglia, where he hosts a mentoring program for undergraduates wanting to enter the film and television industry. Most recently, Adrian has been working closely with the BFI, government, and industry stakeholders to support the skills review and the development of the BFI skills strategy, including being a member of the Film and High-End Television Skills Group. He is also on the board of the Creative Skills Academy in London and is working in partnership with Middlesex University and London Higher. And finally, today's guest moderator is Joseph Chianese, Senior Vice President and Practice Leader of Production Incentives here at Entertainment Partners. In his role, Joe provides production and legislative consulting, financial, tax, and administrative services for domestic and international production incentives. He has over 35 years of accounting, government affairs, production incentives, and tax experience, and has formerly held positions at Sony Pictures Entertainment, the Walt Disney Company, ABC Television Network, Paramount Pictures, and Ernst & Young. Welcome, panelists. It is so nice to have all of you here today. Lovely to see you. I should say good afternoon and good morning as we are coming in from across the globe.
Well, thank you, Natalie, and welcome, everyone. So I just really want to kick this off because we really have a lot to cover today. Starting off with just saying with the WGA strike behind us and hopefully SAG-AFTRA soon to follow, I'm really excited to be able to showcase with the help of our panelists all the attributes the UK has to offer across the key regions. 2023, like 2022, really started off as a banner year, but obviously halted by the strikes. But once these strikes are behind us, I know here at Entertainment Partners, we're gearing up for a real surge in production, not just in the US, but in the UK and in Canada. So it's really exciting to share with all of you this morning, not only what the UK has to offer with regards to incentives, but highlight the crew, the stages, and other supportive infrastructure that the UK has to offer. So I thought I'd just jump quickly to Adrian and have him just sort of give us a state of the UK industry as it stands right now and how the UK is gearing up for production once the strikes are behind us.
Well, thanks, Joe, and pleasure to be part of this today, or this morning, or this afternoon. I think that notwithstanding the strikes and obviously the impact that's had, already the resolution of the writers' strike has led to an immediate uptick in the UK in inquiries and requests about stage space, requests about crew. So we know people are already gearing up to restart again, hopefully the resolution of the other SAG-AFTRA strike. And I think it's fair to say that what we have been doing is ensuring that all the UK nations and regions have carried on with sustaining and developing proactively their activities to ensure that we can carry on meeting the demand. Obviously, pre the strike, we were one of the most popular places on planet Earth to make film and television. And I think with the underlying strengths of our infrastructure, our fiscal incentives, the talent, the investment we're making in talent, the human resource investment, we've probably got the biggest skills program probably anywhere on planet Earth that's currently being planned across the whole of the UK nations and the regions, and the continuing outbuilding of our infrastructure, which has not stopped. We had something like 4 or 5 million square feet of infrastructure, and there's another 4 million square feet either in planning or about to come online over the next sort of 2 years. So you combine what we've already got together with what we are increasingly building, together with investment in skills, and you add on to that the sustenance of our fiscal incentive and actually a future-proof new fiscal incentive that comes into force in January. And I think we're doing everything we can to ensure that we can service large-scale production in the way we have before and increase and welcome more of it.
I love hearing that. Roopesh, give us a producer perspective in terms of what was going on in the UK before the strike and how you and the projects you're planning are gearing up to kick off once the strikes are over.
Absolutely. I think it's been an interesting year, I think, for a lot of people in our industry. I think the year started in a positive way, in the same way that we've had the boom that we've had over the past few years. There are a lot of crew working on amazing projects. And then I think, unfortunately, as everybody started to plan in the event of a strike, we started to see a sort of slowdown in production. And that was sort of in the first quarter of this year. And I think as we started going into the summer, those realities became quite clear that, what was happening to the writers and potentially then to the actors. So I think there has been, the last 5 months, last 6 months for a lot of freelancers in our industry has been tough. I think that, as producers, we can see that when we're working on local content, that's still being able to keep going because it's not involved WGA or SAG. It's not involved writers or actors from those unions, but so much of the industry has been geared towards servicing some of the more larger scale shows that are coming in from whether it's the US or from elsewhere and those co-productions. So I think it's been a slowdown over the last 5-6 months, and we're very hopeful as soon as the Writers Guild strike was resolved. There was definitely an uptick in inquiries, in a sense of people planning with optimism and hope, and I think that's great. I think what I personally as a producer have been doing is working on pilots for Amazon, and it's just quite an interesting way for the industry to move. I think there's, people are now starting to go, okay, how do we look at the kind of projects we want to make going into next year. And as people start to think about budgets and schedules and where they want to spend their money, I think there's a real sense of let's test some of this content out. I think the boom that we had post-COVID, I personally don't think we will get back to that, but I definitely do see a big uptake in production over the next 12 months.
Great. So, Jamie, why don't you just give us a little sense of what's going on in Scotland? I know that as part of your bio, we kind of rolled off a lot of high-profile projects that had been filmed in Scotland. But tell us more about what's going on in Scotland, and then tell us a bit more about Pioneer Studio.
Yeah, certainly. So, Scotland's always been very popular for the locations. We've got some very iconic scenery here, but Glasgow and Edinburgh are about 45 minutes apart in a car, and they couldn't be more different. If you want Gothic and old style Scotland or old style buildings, Edinburgh and East Coast has got everything that you need, stately homes, we've got forest fields. And then Glasgow can double as a kind of round off in the intro there. Indiana Jones was in, the recent one was in Glasgow. The Batman was based there. Hobbs and Shaw's been there. It's got the same Glasgow city centre, the same grid structure as a lot of US cities. It's New York and Manhattan and stuff. So it's very easy for productions to come, close down a couple of streets, throw up some different shop signs, and it can be anywhere, really. Scotland has doubled as, Japan, France, Moscow, Norway, Sweden. We're a bit of a chameleon with it, which has been a strength of ours. And over the past 3 or 4, 5 years, the studio scene really started to catch up. Historically, it was Outlander and Ward Park, which was the kind of main studio, but then we've got Leith, First Stage Studio out at Leith, which is out Edinburgh way. We have Pyramids, which is just inside of that, and then now you have us in Glasgow, with kind of 10 minutes from the city centre of Glasgow, and then even then there's quite a lot of kind of smaller studios popping up. There's Night Skies popped up just around from us. There's quite a vibrant post-production scene, virtual productions getting more popular. And a lot of the supply chain, I'd kind of mentioned Screen Facility Scotland, so that's a kind of free membership organisation that we have in Scotland of the supply chain, who kind of got together through COVID to figure out what they could do to help each other, share insights, share leads, share staff, figure out how to get through those kind of couple of years. And it's kind of continued on. We're just about to rebirth it into the kind of new, into next year. So there is a lot going on in Scotland. We do more and more to kind of keep attracting these larger productions. We are only an hour from London, so we do like to keep making that point. We are still part of the UK, so we do have the UK tax incentive. So there is quite a lot going on, and it's a very attractive place to base productions, which we are trying to beat the drum for a little bit more.
That's great. So Andrew, let's just jump up to Northern Ireland, and I also wanted to just sort of really shout out that, it was Northern Ireland which really gave high-end TV in the UK its jumpstart with Game of Thrones. So just to talk about where you are today and maybe give us a bit of history of how things really evolved in Northern Ireland and really helped transform the UK incentives to include high-end television.
Well, we were, yes. Well, I mean, like anything, there's an element of luck that goes into all of these things, but you have to make your own luck as well to a certain extent. But so we were very fortunate to work with HBO for a decade on Game of Thrones, and they are truly fantastic partners. They were very much bought into our strategy of, so not just the incentive, but the building up the skills around. So we spend this year, we're spending £3.5 million alone on skills, and that was pretty much sort of on the back of Game of Thrones. So we always had a skill strategy, but what we were able to build out with Game of Thrones and that returning series, that was our holy grail. That's what when we set up in '97, we were looking for a returning series. It took us a decade to get there, but we finally got one. And it turned out to be Game of Thrones, which was a nice boost. But that allowed us then to build out a skill strategy of placements, of stepping up, of shadowing, of sort of, as well as building out our skills strategy, which we tell everybody sort of our education skills strategy starts at 4 years of age in Northern Ireland, and we work through schools now. We work through the primary schools, secondary schools, and on through the FE, HE college and out into industry. So we've been able to, if you like, join together all the aspects of our sort of cultural strategy, our education strategy, and our economic strategy have been able to build together. And having arguably the biggest show in the world for a decade allowed us to do that. Allowed us to work with great partners who were open to helping us shape up what that needed to look like, but also it enabled us to go to government and gave us a very strong voice locally and nationally to say, well, these partners are prepared to do this if we can get these parts in place. And then following on from that, so obviously Game of Thrones ended 2018. We've had since then, we've had all manner of things. Most recently, though, The Northman was shot in Belfast Harbour Studios. We've had Dungeons and Dragons. We've had School for Good and Evil. We've had Lift, and now we have How to Train Your Dragon with Universal Studios in Titanic. So we've been busy, but we've also expanded out our strategy as well. So what we would call large scale, so which is sort of effectively the US sort of big shows. It's just one strand of what we do. We also do animation, we do gaming, we do fact-check TV, we do fact-check TV, television, drama, independent film as well. So with the strikes, for example, we're able to shift our focus whenever one area maybe dips down, we can shift our focus to other areas. So when it looked like the strikes were going to be happening, and when it was confirmed the strikes were going to happen, we were able to move into independent films. We financed 10 independent films this year, which was considerably more than we've been in most years. We've done a lot more television drama, so more sort of BBC, more Channel 4, more Channel 5 dramas than normally we would do. But that's to help the crew to lead, to take some of the sting out of that. Out of the strikes, and so we can't help them all. There are some specialist grades that just don't work on these smaller shows, but as far as we can, we've tried to sort of pivot to be able to provide work where we can across multiple genres. So we have been very lucky. I mean, we would attribute luck to an awful lot of what we do, but then you have to seize those opportunities. And what we've tried to do is build an infrastructure that gives us a really solid base of facilities. First of all, so we have Titanic Studios, which is where Game of Thrones was based, but Belfast Harbour Studios opened 2017 and has been full ever since, as expanding from 65,000 square feet to 105,000 square feet by next spring, by Easter 2014. Those 40,000 square feet of new stages will be open. We have Studio Ulster, which is a virtual production facility, which is on the Belfast Harbour's campus. So dedicated, it's more actually innovative technology than just virtual production. So virtual production, motion capture, but it also is a research facility to help work out the sort of the kinks in those new technologies and work them through. And then you've got obviously Loop Studios, which effectively worked hand in hand with Belfast Harbour Studios. Belfast Harbour's 65,000 wasn't quite enough space for some of those big shows that were in it. So it was it had been, if you like, shouldn't call it this, I'm sure the owners will be up to, but it tended to be the overflow or the swing sets. But now, because Belfast Harbour has its 105, you've got 101,000 square feet at Loop, so it's effectively its own standalone facility. So we have three really great facilities which have huge, so credible credits behind them, with it, so based on the back of Game of Thrones. And our crew base has grown from, I always sort of say, so we had about 60 when we started in 1997. We have 1,200 people who work solely in live action and scripted. It's not a vast number of people, but we're only a population of 2 million people, so we are proportionally the same per head of population. We're pretty much the same as most areas of the UK, and that's building every year. We go for evolution rather than revolution. So we have those that education stream going into FE, going into higher education, and coming out into the industry. So we try to have a pathway right the way through all of those things, and that's if we can attribute that pretty much entirely to Game of Thrones and the effect that they've had on us.
Well, it's interesting how important a television series can be here, even in the U.S. You think about like New Mexico with Breaking Bad, or even Georgia with The Walking Dead. Television series not only brings jobs, but it brings training and, as you said, helps develop the crews, and not just in skill set, but also in size. So it's really the importance of high-end television in the UK and around the world is evident. Roopesh, can you talk a little bit about Wales? I know you're not really representing Wales directly, but I know a lot of your projects were shot in Wales. So maybe you can just talk about some of the production quality of shooting in Wales, locations, studios, or other facilities that you've worked with.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had the good fortune of working in Wales on and off over the last sort of 15 years, and whether it's been independent features or whether it's been high-end TV, what's been amazing is to see the growth in the ecosystem within Wales, both in terms of the film production side, but then also everything else that comes with it in terms of training and infrastructure, equipment, crew, the available crew. Just, I think the whole thing has sort of flourished and grown so much particularly over the last decade. I think most recently, I took a Disney Lucasfilm project there, and we had 25 trainees that we used who were all local, and we kept them on the show for 6 months from start to finish. They got a sense of, being able to train on the job and get a real sort of feel for what the industry can offer them. And these are people who traditionally didn't feel that, the film and TV industry was a place for them. But I think what's been great is the volume of shows and the type of shows that have been able to come over, both, I think, in terms of large-scale world-building visual effects shows like His Dark Materials, which shoots out at Bad Wolf's Wolf Studios in Cardiff, Disney's Lucasfilm's Willow, which shot out at Dragon Studios in Bridgend, but obviously the new Doctor Who is shooting there at the moment. So these are all visual effects led shows. And traditionally these were shows that were very M25 centric and London based. But I think the pool of talent that's been trained up over many, many years now, particularly in Wales, has meant that these shows can come and make Wales their home, and they have an infrastructure that they can tap into. There's also just a lot of period drama work and a huge amount of specialized skills that come with that. And again, crew have been trained up over the last 10, 15 years and are able to offer that. So I think what's great is when you make Wales your home for a show, you're using so much of what's available locally. And I think that's just going from strength to strength. Studio wise, there is Dragon Studios that's available that, has 5 incredible stages, lots of space for creature work or puppeteering, or if you need to put up an LED volume screen, they've got that facility, they've got that space there. If you're doing big crowd sequences, big sort of period drama stuff where you've got tons and tons of costumes, again, there's a whole infrastructure there. It's very accessible for crew. So that's one studio, and the other being Wolf Studios, which is the home to the Bad Wolf production. So His Dark Materials industry, currently Doctor Who, and that's a six stage space there. And I produced the second season of His Dark Materials there. And again, such an incredible group of people that are available locally, who are specialized, whether it's scenic paintings, whether it's LED volume work, whether it's previs. You're not having to outsource to London as traditionally done. It's, you have these people available on your doorstep. And I think that's exciting for any show going there.
So what I wanted to do, obviously, when we think about why producers choose locations, obviously story and subject matter are key. But once you get beyond that, I think the 3 pillars of production that people look to are incentives, crew, stages, and infrastructure. I know that I want to give Adrian a chance and all the panelists to talk a bit about the UK incentive, but we're only going to do a very high-level overview. EP did a really successful webinar back on September 19th where we did a very deep dive on the new UK expenditure credit. So if you haven't seen that, please go to ep.com. We archive all our webinars. But I wanted to give Adrian a chance first to just kick off and just talk a bit about, at a very high level, what the UK incentive is, when some of the changes will take effect, overall effective rates, things that producers need to know.
Yeah, very happy to do that, Joe. But I just wanted to pick up on what the panelists have said, and sort of collectively that demonstrates that the UK isn't just all about London and the Southeast, that there's been a fantastic explosion in the UK. And we now have 7 production clusters, including Wales and Northern Ireland and Scotland. But, the west of, the north, east of England is developing, northwest, Manchester, Liverpool, the developments outside of Bristol, and crew bases are developing, as well as, has been, Roopesh has mentioned and other people have mentioned, with not only infrastructure in terms of studios, but actually and crew, but also visual effects development going on and a clustering that we've never seen, driven largely by high-end television, but a clustering we've never seen before in the UK. It really is a massive expansion, an expansion I've just, a fantastic expansion in 5 years, really, 5 or 6 years that this has happened across the UK nations and regions. And obviously underpinning that, as you said, is the fact that we have, I regard, one of the most transparent, intelligible, and sustainable fiscal incentives that's ever been introduced. Film and television 2007, TV tax credit with other reliefs for children's television, animation, and games in 2013. And I think the thing is, and this is what's not changing, the thing is about the UK fiscal incentives is that the government hasn't put a cap on them. The government isn't reviewing them and saying we're going to change them. They're not going to disappear anywhere. Our government, together with our opposition parties, are all united in one thing. The tax credits have had a fantastic fiscal benefit from the UK, and they're not going anywhere. But what the government has done is wanting to future-proof them, basically by saying, okay, worldwide tax legislation is changing, so they are moving from a model which was the tax credit to what's called an audiovisual expenditure credit. That means that, and this has, I think, caused a little bit of confusion, is that people have looked and suddenly the rate that people can claim for the relief seems to have changed, because before the credit was, it's worth something between 20 and 25%, of your qualifying expenditure that you get back by submitting, your audited accounts, etc., qualifying for the cultural test. And now all of a sudden the headline was, well, we're introducing this new system and it's worth 39%. But actually that's just the nature of or 35%, the nature of the formulation. Actually, it's kind of worth the same. And to just be quite clear, the AVEC, when it's introduced for film and high-end television, will net out at about 24%, 24. So similar to the previous system. There is a change, there is a difference. That difference is that if you're doing animation or you're doing children's television, there has been an increase. And that increase is worth about another 5%. So it's getting up to about 29% if you're doing animation or children's television, which is very welcome. It's very welcome for the animation industry. It's very welcome for children's television. The animation industry was saying it wasn't as competitive as it had been under the previous system. And this new system, the used and consumed rules, the qualifying expenditure of high-end television at £1 million an episode, a whole variety of things that people are used to are staying exactly the same. I say there is this increase for animation and for children's TV. There's going to be a new definition of documentary, which is being supplied by the British Film Institute, which will go into the new legislation. And we're anticipating the final legislation, it's been consulted on, being published next month in the autumn statement by our Chancellor. And the new system will start in operation. The AVEC will start in January. However, because we wanted to make sure, and we discussed this with government, we wanted to make sure that nobody was caught out by understanding the system or, using the old system, is that we have a period from January 24 to January 25 where the two systems will run in parallel, and you can use either essentially up until the spring of 25. And then you have to have got, if you're still using the old system, you have to have got everything completed by 2027 when that system will phase out. Mm-hmm. Obviously, people who are using animation and children's television will want to use the new system straight away because they're going to get more money from January. But essentially, you've got lots of information about this. Your experts can give more detail on it. But I think what I wanted to emphasize is that we're really pleased that the government's future-proofed our fiscal incentive. It's staying there. They're taking no money away from it. They're not making it less valuable. In fact, they're making it more valuable. And they're also looking at visual effects to see whether there's an increased profiling, increased value for visual effects, which we'll also find out about hopefully in the next couple of months. But they are taking that very seriously. So it might not just be animation and children's TV, but there may also be an increase for doing more visual effects work in the UK. But whether that happens or not, we are introducing the new AVEC. The AVEC's there. It has all the same benefits as the previous system. And it's sustained and funded in the same way as the previous system. And so we think it's going to maintain exactly the same level of competitiveness that we've had in previous years.
Adrian, I just wanted to give you a chance to chat a bit more about the type of projects that do qualify. I know you and I in the past have had situations where we heard from independent producers who felt that there was something about the program that somehow made them not qualify. And you've already said basically that there's, the minimum spend is relatively low. There's no cap. Yes. Maybe just sort of emphasize, because I know that Andrew had been mentioned up in Northern Ireland, that clearly they have lots of independent production happening. So I just wanted to make sure the independent producers out there are comfortable in knowing that the UK is open not just to the high-end television and the big budget films, but open to everyone.
Well, essentially, there isn't a British independent film made in the UK that doesn't access the tax credit. I don't know how they would make the film, to be absolutely honest. It's absolutely critical to the ecosystem of British independent film. As you say, the minimum expenditure, we lowered it a few years ago, and it's very low. So very, very low budget feature films qualify for the tax credit. There's a minimum expenditure on television because it's felt that most of our domestic industry, which is worth 3.8 billion on its own, never mind about inward investment, that doesn't require an expenditure credit in the same way as high-end television to be made in the UK. So the 1 million is there for television, but it's not there for feature film. And people qualified, films of a few £100,000 for the tax credit. So there's no two ways about it. In terms of independent production, and independent production absolutely qualifies. We also have a very broad cultural test, which is a Europe-wide cultural test, not just a test for the UK, which means that if you're co-producing with other parts of Europe, you can still qualify. And on top of that, there are, and I'm sure that, Andrew and others will tell you about this, on top of the national tax credit, there are also regional incentives. Northern Ireland, Andrew just talked about it, supporting 10 independent feature films. Scotland has a grants and incentive package. Wales does. There are also other incentive packages available, regional incentive packages available in Liverpool and in Yorkshire in terms of the English regions as well. So there is the national tax credit, which is generous and very low qualifying expenditure, and you can just use it for visual effects as well if you don't do your principal shooting in the UK. But on top of that, there are also regional incentives if you go and shoot in different parts of the UK nations and regions as well. So it's really important to bear in mind that it's not just a big credit for big productions, and it's not just a big credit and that's all you can get, but actually you can partner with the nations and the regions to make your buck go even further.
Right. So, Adrian, a couple of things. You mentioned the cultural test, and it's another area where I've always been talking to producers, they get very concerned that, oh, this is not a British film. And so I just wanted to make sure that everyone who's listening is aware that you and your team at the British Film Commission work really closely with producers to help them maneuver that cultural test. And my colleague, Sam Collette, FLB, wrote an excellent article about understanding the cultural test. So if anyone's interested, again, go to ep.com. It's a really great article. But again, it just scares people, I think, sometimes when they think they're not a Merchant Ivory film, they're not going to qualify. But if you just rattle off some titles that people would be shocked that they were actually shot in the UK, and you would think they're just such American films.
I mean, the thing is that the cultural test was designed not to prevent films. It was designed to facilitate film and television. And, we do have, whether it's yes, of course, there are things that you think of quintessentially British, whether it's The Crown for TV or whether it's the Harry Potter series or James Bond. But considering the overwhelming majority of Marvel movies are made in the UK, and, the DC universe is getting more entrenched in the UK because Warner Brothers want to actually expand their production of DC films coming to Leavesden Studios up, from 2027 onwards. Considering, the volume of Disney films that have been made in the UK. So whether it's Captain America or whether it's the Avengers or whether it's Barbie was,
yes,
pretty much entirely shot in the UK.
Yep.
And so when you think about those films, that makes you, we're not there to prevent people working with us. We're there to facilitate people working with us. And as you said, we have my team in the UK working with our friends in the nation of the region, but we have, Samantha Pereira, our head of production in the UK, used to run the certification unit. She knows it inside out in terms of qualification, and so does our team. The certification unit itself, based in the BFI, led by the wonderful Anna Mansi, are very, very helpful people. They want you to come and make your films in the UK nations and regions or your television programs. They don't want to stop you, and we can work through how you can ensure that you meet the points on the cultural test. And the very fact I've mentioned those titles, and there are many, many more I could mention, indicates just what a flexible system that we have that is designed to meet the criteria and access that door to the resource so that you can come and employ people in the UK and shoot in the UK and make the film and television program you want to. So people shouldn't be, on the credit generally and on the cultural test specifically, the simple thing I'll say is just come and talk to us. And we can rank, yes, your colleagues at FLB, other accountancy companies, the certification unit, there's lots of people in the UK infrastructure that understand this system really well and can lead you through it. And our advice is, free at the point of entry, and then we can refer you to other more specialist advice if you need it.
Great. So, Jamie, I want to jump back to Scotland a bit and just give you a chance, if you can, to talk a bit more about the incentive in Scotland, and also just talk a bit more about the other resources that Scotland has with regards to crew. And I know we have your Pioneer Studio, but maybe just give us a bit more information on Scotland.
Yeah, certainly. So there are, as has been discussed so far, there are a couple of funds, one more angled towards development, so single project development funding for the kind of initial cost of a feature film or documentary project. And then the main fund for this type of large productions, which is the Production Growth Fund. And really the kind of things that's looking to qualify as Scottish spend, and it's really to attract productions here and ensure that they're using Scottish crew, Scottish supply chain, Scottish facilities, so that they kind of leave the place in a better way than when they found it. We can train more folk, we can improve the facilities, we can support the supply chain. That's really what the incentive is there for, similar to the UK. And all the regional incentives really is to attract these things so that we can do good with it. And we find, a lot of the productions that we speak to at Pioneer, and I know it's the same across Scotland, folk are very open to that, they're very keen on that. In this industry specifically, there's a lot of community-based feeling in it, and folk kind of want to put a ladder behind them and help folk get up and build crew and build stuff. And then there's a lot of skills programs, a lot of training programs. Screen Scotland does, Screen Skills do, and there's a whole load of others. In terms of the kind of supply chain and crew base in Scotland, it is ever growing. There are, as I say, a lot of training programs. Outlander runs a great training program, and having that recurring series there really helps that. Having busier industry in general in Scotland really helps do that. And we certainly, work with productions and they work closely with Screen Scotland to ensure that, productions that come here and come to the studios at Pioneer or across Scotland are encouraged to have, apprenticeships on them or trainee programs on them to facilitate that, tie in with a lot of the local education partners, a lot of the local colleges, and a lot of the cross training. There's a lot of skills in Scotland, a lot of tradesfolk in Scotland that can transfer across. It's not a black magic industry that you can't get into. There are paths into it. So part of what we do as a studio is to create those. So we work with Business Gateway and things like that to help, scaffolders or joiners or whatever see that they can actually, there's a route into this type of industry, which may be a little bit more exciting or something that's up the street that they're kind of looking for. And in terms of, the opportunities that the supply chain offers, we at Pioneer, the sort of model that we're pushing for with the space that we have is similar to the kind of larger studios down south in the Pinewoods and so on. And we have quite a few supply chain partners on site. So we have ADF here, we have Location One here, we have Supply to Location, Panelux. We also support some of the smaller companies, so guys like Filmhawk and Kuroki Motion, who have the programmable robotic arm camera and things like that. And Screen Facility Scotland, we work with them, so we base their headquarters here and help the full supply chain. As a result, so that really we try and get folk either directly onto production or onto the thousands of companies that then help facilitate it and bring it. And that's the size of productions that Scotland's able to bring in, from independents, from documentaries, right through to your Star Wars and your Batmans and all of these types of ones is there. So there's certainly an opportunity for folk to get stuck in if they want to be. And there's no shortage of folk that are keen to get into the industry and really make a difference. So we've seen big growth in that area.
That's great. So, Andrew, I know we touched on things in Northern Ireland at a very high level, but maybe you could just do a deeper dive on what the incentive is and who can apply for it, and then maybe just talk a bit more about the crews. And then I really wanted to jump back to Roopesh just to get his sort of producer perspective of the incentive and the training that's going on in the UK.
Sure. Okay. Well, incentive-wise, so yes, we have sort of £13 million a year. So I can't even remember what that would be in dollars at the moment. I'm sorry, I should have checked that before I started this. We split that across the genres that we fund, so independent film, television, drama, animation, games, large scale, fact and TV. But effectively, sort of each sort of sector or each genre has a sort of ratio of return. So we have an economic return against it. So for large scale, for every pound that we put into it, we look for sort of effectively 20 back, because large scale projects, they can afford to do that, and that's the way it works. We are open to negotiation, conversation, and discussion on all of these things. Nothing is set in stone other than the project has to happen in Northern Ireland, at least majority in Northern Ireland. More than happy to work with our colleagues in Scotland, Wales, England, or indeed the Republic of Ireland. We're on the island of Ireland, and you have two tax incentives. You have sort of two film bodies. You have two production bases. So we're more than happy to work on an island of Ireland basis, but also with our colleagues often in Scotland, often in Wales, and around the rest of the UK as well. In terms of crew, as I said, we have sort of 1,200 who work exclusively or mainly in live action sort of scripted areas across independent film, television, drama, and large scale. Constantly trying to build those up. So when you come to talk to us about the money that we might put into your independent film or your TV drama or your large scale, we ask for effectively three things. One is, the first is the economic return. How so what is your direct spend in Northern Ireland going to be? What sort of return is the economy going to get? Not Northern Ireland Screen doesn't get it. It's the economy of Northern Ireland. How many jobs are you going to create? How many people are you going to employ? That's the first side of it. Then the second thing would be the sort of what we call the CPD, the continuous professional development, the existing crews. What are the opportunities there for people to step up into higher roles? What's the opportunity for our DOPs, designers, those sort of key creative HODs? We want as many of those to be employed rather than people being brought in. And then the other strand, or the third part, is the skills. How engaged in our skills strategy are you going to be? At the minute we employ 184 trainees. Northern Ireland Screen directly employs 184 trainees on our books. And we place those people directly into production. So we take on a trainee for up to 2 years, and then because we're funding the projects that are coming through Northern Ireland, we can help them, or we place them within our production. So we look for those productions to be very much open to taking those trainees. They're at our cost. They're free to the productions. The productions obviously have to cover things like catering or transporting them around the place, but effectively their wage is covered by Northern Ireland Screen. And we then look for stepping up opportunities. So we will also incentivize you to step up crew into higher grades, and we also look for sort of shadowing opportunities for grades where, so for directors, producers to work alongside the income producers to step up our talent and try and give them those opportunities as well. So that's the broad package that we will talk about. Those three things are what we'll talk about. When you come looking for the money, we'll say, well, this is what we will look for in return for that incentive. Our money is, we pay, well, first thing first, cash flow to cross production. So typical cash flow for a large scale project would be 33% on signature, 33% first day, 3% on last day photography. So you're effectively paid out by the time you've wrapped on a large scale project. Independent films slightly different because the way they're financed and sort of the risk profile of independent films and television dramas. But it's we pay all of our. There's no fees removed from whatever you're awarded is what you receive, and also we pay our own legal fees and our own costs and so forth. So effectively you don't have to. Our money is cash flowed across the production.
Ooh, we lost him.
I think we lost him. Well, I'm going to jump then to Roopesh and hopefully. Oh, you're back, Andrew.
I'm back. Sorry, did I disappear? I didn't realize I disappeared there.
You were gone for like 30 seconds. That's all.
Oh dear. I do apologize. Well, all I was saying was that the money, our money is low cost. We don't take any fees. We don't charge. Obviously there's no interest involved in it, and we pay our own legal fees. So that's where we sit.
Perfect. So I just wanted to give Roopesh a chance to talk a bit about, one, his experiences with the UK incentive, maybe some insights he might have with regards to the new expenditure credit, advice for producers out there, and this just as general observations, producer observations for those who are interested in producing in the UK who haven't. That's a lot, isn't it, Roopesh? Sorry.
That's all right. I mean, I think, to echo what Adrian was saying, it is... Certainly, I think the most user-friendly tax incentive in the world, and it is very, very straightforward. And I think a common misconception is you have to have, be working on a huge movie or an extremely large television show to be able to be qualified for it. Though the independent filmmakers that are such a big part of the ecosystem, whether it's film or TV, mainstream film or TV. A lot of these people start in those independent features. That's how I started as well. And the tax credit is really fantastic at helping those independent producers, those smaller productions, because of its user friendliness. Also, just in terms of the cash flow that comes with it and how those incentives, the rebates work. But also, as Adrian said, whether it's the BFI and Sam and the team there who are so fantastic, whether it's FLB or other accountants that we can just call up and go, hey, listen, we're thinking about this. What's the best way to kind of structure the show and structure our cash flow? Everybody's very, very clued up on it and really aware. And I think that's great. I think also the regional incentives that are being offered are so important, I think, in terms of attracting the shows, but also that sort of paying it forward, I think, in the sense of, those investments come in, local incentives come in, but they're being spent in that region and they continue to help grow those regions. So I think that, again, they're not mutually exclusive. You can get the UK tax credit as long as you've qualified you will always be entitled to that. In addition to that, you have these incentives and the government grants or the local government grants that you can also tap into. And I think that producers just need to look into that, whether it's in, Northern Ireland, Scotland, or Wales. It's fantastic that that's there. And as a producer, we look for those incentives every time we're assessing where's best to shoot a project. It always starts with a script. It always starts with the location. And then it goes to who has the most competitive tax incentive? And, are there any other local initiatives that we can tap into? And what is the training like in terms of crew that are coming up? Our contributions to the Screen Skills Levy in all the production budgets is significant in terms of keeping that ecosystem moving forward. And, more and more shows get the opportunity to bring on trainees and apprenticeships and offer step-up schemes, people who might just about be ready for that next rung on the career ladder. Screen Skills are there to be able to help support that and help fund some of those places. So again, that's a really, really strong incentive for producers to be aware of. And the local producers on the ground here in the UK will be the ones that can help, also work with the production companies coming in to kind of give a sense of where to go to tap into some of these things.
Roopesh, I wanted to ask you one final question before I go to Natalie with audience Q&A. We didn't really touch on vendors. I know that's also an issue. And I know that Adrian mentioned the concept of use and consume with regards to the incentive. But in general, I just wanted maybe you could share with the audience in terms of the availability of what you need to get a project made in the UK, that it's all in the UK. And if not, you can get it from outside the UK. And as long as you use it, it qualifies.
Absolutely. But I think what's important is that it is all available in the UK, and I think and one of the biggest areas used to be visual effects, and that was often an area that was outsourced to Canada or Germany or wherever else where they had really strong incentives. And actually, I think the fact that the visual effects industry has developed so much in the last decade in the UK is really exciting. I think from script to screen, in terms of facilitation and infrastructure and crew and vendors, everything is available here within the UK, whether it's, state-of-the-art trailers for your star talent, whether it's state-of-the-art camera equipment, specialized lenses, and that's what's amazing about Panavision, Arri, all of the camera makers and companies, that they're so willing to engage with the cinematographers and with the productions. If there's a specific thing you need, they will work with you to develop that technology. They're constantly doing R&D. We've now in this really fortunate position where, at one point there was a little squeeze on studio space. That I think has dramatically changed in the last couple of years. The landscape has really opened up. And I think that was probably the main thing that we needed, that additional support. I think all of the other vendors that you would want, we have state-of-the-art special effects technicians, it's the lighting companies are brilliant. Everything is available here. And I think that's what's super exciting about filming in the UK, anywhere in the UK. And a lot of these companies have bases out, as Jamie and Andrew know, in Northern Ireland, in Scotland. It's, again, not just London centric. And then those vendors also qualify for some of those local initiatives in terms of local spend, because they have set up, bases in those regions, and that also contributes towards the incentives.
Well, fantastic. So Natalie, I'm going to jump to you. I know we're down to the wire, but I don't know if we have time for a couple of questions. And again, I'll just say to the audience, any questions that don't get answered live, we'll be happy to respond via email. So Natalie, I will leave it to you to decide how much time we have left for Q&A.
Yes, down to the wire. I'll pose a few questions now. I'm going to start with Adrian. We have some questions from viewers about what is the best way for a U.S. producer or anyone outside of the UK, a U.S.-based production worker, to get involved or work with a UK producer for a project in the UK.
Well, basically, this is a very straightforward answer. Come and talk to us. Obviously, we kind of know the entire infrastructure of the UK, and we know the production company. It depends on what kind of production it is. Whether you're a big production that's looking for line producers, or whether you're a smaller production that's looking for a creative producer that will help you, raise finance together. You want to do a co-production with, whether that's economic or otherwise. But the simple answer is come and talk to us. We, all of our team, my team is kind of industry related, comes from the industry. If you're based in the US, we have a team in LA, headed up by Katie Kotok, our SVP in Los Angeles, and she and her team are happy to talk to you if you're in the US and you want to have an initial conversation with her. And then you can come and talk to our UK team that headed up by Samantha Parekh. I mentioned her earlier, our head of UK production, and we can put you in touch. The Production Guild represents pretty much all the line producers in the UK. We can put you in touch with the Production Guild. We can talk to you about individuals, or if it's creative producers that you're doing a smaller independent production and you want to do something with a UK production company, we again can give you ideas and suggestions of people that you can have conversations with. That's what we're there for. So please come and talk to us.
Wonderful. Andrew, I'm going to jump over to you now. We have similar questions related to below the line positions. Are there any opportunities or resources that Northern Ireland Screen provides if someone's looking to come over?
Well, on our website, we have our crew calls that go up. So when productions come to Northern Ireland, we encourage them to what we.
Oh, the pesky Wi-Fi.
Not again.
Oh,
back.
There you are.
I'm back. Sorry, I have no sense that I've disappeared. I was talking away there.
You mentioned the crew call, so if you could pick up there.
So we have crew calls on our website. So we require the productions working in Northern Ireland put out a call, effectively telling people that they are looking for crew in either specific sort of departments or across the entire production. So that's on our website in the vacancy section, which we are improving our website. It will become more apparent hopefully quite soon. But however, I have to stress, most of our work is about getting Northern Ireland resident crew work on these productions. That's why we exist. We are an economic department masquerading as a creative department. So our job is to get Northern Ireland residents work on these productions. So if you want to work in Northern Ireland on a production, you want us to help you, best thing to do is to become a resident of Northern Ireland. There you go. That's probably the best thing. And we would love to have you. We bring your skills and all your loved ones and come and live in Northern Ireland. That's what I would say.
That 2 million residency is about to jump.
Yeah,
all right.
absolutely.
Thank you, Andrew. Roopesh, I'm going to give a question to you now. As a producer, if anyone is looking for how to find crew rates or fringes or any of the finance numbers, any advice there?
I think it's employing great line producers. We're a line producer based system in terms of the international production. So, unless you are looking for a specific creative production company to work with you, it's usually the line producer that's your entry point into both budgeting up the scale of the show that you're trying to make or the film you're making, as well as tapping into the right crew, as well as understanding crew rates, understanding the local sort of tax implications, things around national insurance and how that works. So it's all through line producers and the Production Guild, and obviously the BFI are the first two stops really in terms of finding great line producers and producers for your projects.
Fantastic. Thank you. Jamie, I'm heading to you with our last question, and this is specifically about Pioneer Studios. With your background in digital production, can you talk to us about the state of digital in the UK and what capacity you have at Pioneer Studios?
Yeah, certainly. So, I mean, you'd have to be living under a rock to not see how the advances in technology are changing the industry, right? It's been mentioned a few times, virtual production and motion capture and things like that, the large complex that's been built in Belfast, for example, that they were speaking about. Scotland is no different. I mean, the last production that we had in here I think they were about 50-foot long LED volumes, two of them as part of it, pretty much the full length of a large stage. And we see quite a lot of it, even at the grassroots level that we see, through some of the other productions and some of the smaller companies that we help and support. There's a lot of innovation and a lot of technology advancements that's happening. And Roopesh mentioned earlier about, the partners with specific lenses or software, technology and software, physical and digital, that really has been innovated quite heavily. The UK, as well as our industry, in tax incentive, there is a large R&D tax incentive that exists. So companies here leverage that. They will very happily work with you to design and build pretty much whatever it is that you need. So the UK really is a hotbed of innovation, and this industry is no different. We see a lot of it in Scotland, and Scotland put a lot of focus on digital industry specifically. So there's a lot of digital skill sets across Glasgow, across Edinburgh, Central Belt, even the Highlands and Islands. There's a lot of development companies, software companies, space programs. We've got kind of everything going. And those are all a lot of skill sets that translate into this industry. As I kind of mentioned earlier, we do a lot reaching out to those industries with synergy that have skill sets that can come into the industry, bolster it, and improve it, strengthen it. It's really what we put a big focus on. So there's certainly a lot happening here at Pioneer. I know there's a lot happening across the rest of Scotland, and it doesn't look as though it's slowing down anytime soon.
No, certainly not. Well, so much to take advantage of in Scotland and in all of the regions of the UK. So thank you, gentlemen, for all of the information that you've shared with us today. And thank you, panelists, for hanging with us. I know we've gone over an hour, so many of you have another place to be. So I will quickly wrap up by saying, if you would like to find a recording of the Master Series, our session today, or any of the past episodes of the Master Series that we have filmed, you can find all of those at ep.com/Master Series. We will also be sending out a copy of the recording from today's session. So in case you had to drop off early or want to replay any of the sections, because we did cover a lot of great information today, you can do so. And we also would like to encourage that if you're looking for any assistance with production incentives, we have great tools on the EP website. We have a jurisdiction comparison tool, an incentives estimator. You can get in touch with Joe and our team of incentives experts, and we are here to provide you the best information and the guidance for your production, no matter where you're heading. Thank you again to our wonderful panelists, and thank you to you, our audience. It's always wonderful to see you, and we hope to see you again at the next Master Series.